Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen and
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Good afternoon, Christeen. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We've been enjoying some beautiful weather, so it's not like super cold or snowy. We actually had some sunshine this weekend, so I got some natural light therapy.
Nice.
How's it going there in Connecticut?
It is cold. I don't know. I have not been checking the record books, but we had snow last weekend. It has been cold. We have not seen 70 degrees yet. The forsythia just bloomed last week. I think April 10th. Today is the 16th, and it's 49 degrees here today for high. So it has been one of the colder springs on record. Average soil temperatures last week were 45. So cool.
Yeah. Sounds like.
But we're cooking along with finishing up round one next week. And the lawns are looking okay. So things are good.
Nice.
Yeah. Today we're going to have a conversation about a couple of different topics. One of them is kind of developing a right-hand person to the owner of the business. And I wanted to talk about this because, I've done it. I've struggled with it. I've kind of done it the right way and the wrong way. And where you have some coaching clients that are in the middle of it. And Christeen's had done it and had her challenges and seen what worked and what didn't work. And for a lot of us, the first time we do it, it's the first time that we do it. And so we don't really know what the best way to do it is. And we think that, this might be the best path or that might be the best path. But, it's the first time we do it. So we're kind of finding the best way to do it. And we learn and retry it. And maybe it doesn't work out and maybe it does. But as we go along, we can see and observe. But the other thing is, as coaches now, it's hard to see our own stuff in our own life, whether it's in business or life. But boy, can you see other people's stuff way easier, right? So I've learned quite a bit from coaching people over the years of what works and what doesn't when we're bringing on our right-hand person.
Yeah, I like this subject because I think no matter where you're at in business, you're trying to get your head wrapped around what that looks like. I know before I was even there, I was trying to figure out, well, how is this going to work? How am I going to get somebody else to kind of step into my shoes and take over, some of the things I'm doing? And so whether you're there now and you're working on this, or maybe you're at your second or third go, or you're looking at it in a futuristic, vision to where you're going, okay, this is where I want to get to. I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around that. I think what we're going to talk about today is going to help you move forward with this idea or even get it right.
Yeah, hopefully, you get it right, more right than if you weren't in this conversation. So one of the first things that typically happens, at least it did for me, was like, oh, I need another me. I need someone just like me to kind of take my place. And, I quickly tried to find that person, and usually they're not out there, right? Because if you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, it's a pretty thin population, right? Most people don't want that much risk. They don't want that much volatility. They want a regular paycheck. They want to go home and tell the spouse or the person they're living with or they're responsible to that they're going to get this regular, steady paycheck. And a lot of times when you own a business, telling somebody this is the paycheck every week and these are my hours, that's not always the thing. So it's not always, you can't find that person. And so, but what I did learn from what that was, I actually didn't want someone that was like me. I wanted someone that had different skills than me that could like complement my skills and talents. So that was very helpful once I realized that. So a couple of years looking for another like salesman-y kind of person, motivating person, not finding him, but finding someone that was more technical, more like hands-on, and could get things done, actually proved to be more beneficial.
Well, that makes sense to me because in working with you, Steve, those are not your strong points, right? It's like, and that's what I'm hearing because I'm like, I know you, I know how you work, like you're not a total details type person and you're not a task person.
Not at all.
So that's the person you needed to show up in that space and
Right.
complement, that portion of you to where you're like, oh, we could get more done, or this person would be better at it if they had these strengths.
Right. So if you're a high task person and you're thinking, I just need somebody who has more of the same task talents I do, you might want to possibly think maybe I need somebody that has more people skills, or maybe I have somebody that has more communication skills. So whatever your talents or skills, and this is, this was going on way before I knew about Clifton Strengths. Now we know about Clifton Strengths and we use it every day. So just thinking about like how helpful that would have been to know what my own natural talents were, and then say, who do I need on my team to help me build this company? Knowing that I need people now that have more consistency and discipline, and I need people that have more tasks. That helps. But back then, I didn't know, you're going back 30 something years. I just thought, oh, another me would be helpful. But when I had that task person, that was helpful. But then once I had them, I didn't really fully know how to support them, and also like how to help them to grow. Right. So then you throw people at them and you say, train them. And then sometimes they get frustrated with people because it's just easier if they do it themselves. So then you're like, well, it is probably easier if you do it themselves, but how do we build that second or third or fourth crew if you're always doing everything?
Right. And I think that another part of this that I can relate with, and I would suspect this happened with you as well, when you brought in that more kind of like focused, task person or high executing person, there were some things that had to change, I suspect, from how you would do them or how they were done in the past to how this person would do them. And you probably learned that it was more effective of what they brought to the table. Some of the changes where they're like, okay, well, we're going to use this Excel workbook and then we're going to, put information in there and we're going to analyze it and it's going to tell us this. And you're probably like, that sounds great. Like, you do that, so, but it probably was different from what you used to do before.
Yeah. So the first person I brought on that was a landscape foreman guy. So, right. And so he was more technical. He started really the landscape, hardscape part of the business. And so we didn't have all the tools that we have now, laser levels. We used to use string lines, and like cutoff saws were not as nice as they are now. We used to actually snap block with these brick saws. But he was a lot more technical on that side, and measuring and string lines and stuff. But he had a lot more tools, right? And a lot more organized. The truck was more organized and stuff like that. The biggest thing for him was like trying to get him to talk and teach. Very quiet, very technical. And he used to get frustrated with almost everybody he worked with, and trying to create systems to teach other people was really difficult. So that was kind of my challenge with him. And he stayed with me for about 4 years. But what I did learn from him was systems. Like there's a way that a patio gets installed, and there's a way that a sidewalk gets installed. And there's just ways that things get done. So then we could create systems to train people from that. And I did learn that you definitely need a craftsman on the crew, but you need someone that can definitely communicate and train people. So the next person I looked for, I needed someone that had that craftsman and the communication skill. So he could not only talk to me, but to the people on his crew, and wasn't, just a grumpy guy because he had to, train people. Even though he wanted to work on the crew, he could at least direct and, delegate things to people.
So what I'm hearing is that, one, it's a different skill set, and you have to be particular what you learned the first time. And then the second time you're like, oh, I need this specific person. This time, like, this guy was great. He brought this to the table. This time I need someone who does this and does this, because this is the area it could be improved.
Right. Yes. Yep. And that the second landscape foreman manager is still with me. Yeah. So, having that communication skill, it mattered, and it made a big difference. So I did learn, and then another right-hand person that I had is, I guess, they call them the integrator, right? They're getting stuff done, but more in the office stuff too, right? So the Excel file, the pivot tables, all of that, managing production stuff, scheduling, routing, really technical. Strategic is the number one strength of this individual. So seeing what's wrong with things. But you have to also guide them, because they see everything that's wrong. They can come across as very negative. And but I was appreciative that he would see the things that were wrong. Just in a team, that's negative Nelly. So you have to let the team know that that's that person's job, is to see what's wrong so it can be improved. They're not really negative. They're just, that's their talent skill. And then you have to help them mature on how to communicate to people, let them know what's wrong without poking them in the eye and kicking them in the knee and picking them, deflating them and telling them they're stupid. It's just like, hey, this is wrong and we can make it better, instead of, you're stupid, that's wrong, So also coaching these people around their talents to build a team up. So, so that's important. I think I struggled with that because I was like, what's wrong with this person? Why can't they be nice to people? Why can't they just talk to people in a nice way? And they thought they were just being direct.
Right. Yeah. And as a strategic, as my number one strength as well, it's, I like to call it, being able to identify the gaps and the opportunities to fill them, instead of being like, that's wrong and that's wrong and that's wrong. And, oh, you missed a spot. It's like, ooh, there's an opportunity, or, there's a gap here. This is something that we could do something with. So just kind of, I think that's my strategic kind of maturing, is changing the language around it, because then it changes how I respond, or react, to where I could be like, hey, you missed a spot, or, hey, yeah, this color looks great on this wall. You did a really good job painting, here's a little area right over here where, it might be the light reflecting off of the wall, it might need a little bit more paint, or so that has kind of helped me, is like, I like to look at it as like, identify the gaps and the opportunities that they present.
Right. So I had to learn how to coach this individual, right, to work with other people. And I did not have that talent skill. So I had to get other people to coach him. So my coaching was to have other people coach him and train him and help him to communicate that. And work within the strengths. And so my wife has strategic number 2, but the way she communicates around it is very different than that. And Donna Lyons is communication number 2. I mean, strategic number 2. And she has a very nice way of saying, hey, maybe you could look at it like this, or try it like that, or have you ever. So, but my strategic number 1 has been coached, and he's still with us, and he runs a really, really highly productive department. So, but a lot of anger around when people would do things. He had a lot of anger around when people would do things wrong, or they wouldn't do it right. So he would take it very personal, and they weren't looking out for the company, and they were, lazy, or, whatever it was. So a lot of that issue was, he took it so personal. So the real thing I'm getting at with this is, like, you can find the person who can do the job really well, but is it really building your company up in a healthy way? And it wasn't. The skill set was there, but the personal part wasn't there. But we can't just fire these people. So, my solution was to get coaching around that and build that personal skill and the communication skill, which we still have to work on.
And that makes a huge difference. If you hire someone and then you realize, oh, there's something missing, then you can come to the table and say, okay, are they coachable? Right. And if they're coachable, then it's worth investing that time in them to, help them grow, help them improve these skill sets that you're missing or you feel, needs to be improved. But if they're not coachable, then you just have to realize, if I can't coach this person and they can't improve and, whatever change, I have to let them go. And
Right.
it's not unkind to do so, because you're letting them, giving them the opportunity to go find the place where they're really going to thrive, and opening up the space for the right person to come into your business. And I think that's a really important point. When you're bringing up a second and you make this big hire, if there's such a gap and this person isn't coachable, you have to decide then how much time are you going to invest in it, and how much are you going to sacrifice, by keeping this person who isn't going to get you there. So having that awareness and making that, tough decision instantly, you're going to get there faster. Otherwise, you just have to imagine in your head, you're kicking the can down the road and you're just going to keep kicking this can.
Yeah.
Never going to go away.
Absolutely. Yeah. If they're not coachable, first off, they have to be coachable. And second, you might not be the coach for them. You might have to get a different coach, someone that has a different skill set other than yourself to coach them. But if they're not going to be coachable, then you have to they can't stay in the company. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think something else that's extremely relative to, like, bringing up a second or bringing in that next person. And we had done this exercise at our last Mind Your Own Business retreat, which I thought was really fun. And something kind of came up around that time where we were identifying people's strengths, and we were identifying the different ways that these strengths communicate with each other. And so we did this fun little exercise where we had, the 4 domains, which, Steve,
Influencing, executing, relationship, and intellection thinking, right? Yep.
Yeah, strategic thinking.
Strategic
So we
thinking.
have these 4 domains, and we created a little exercise and mixed up the different domains. And we had, like, a strategic talk to an executing, and a relationship talk to an executing, and an influence talk to, a strategic. And so we mixed it up, these themes, and had them communicate to each other and do this little practice. And they realized a huge factor when it came to communicating expectations and needs, turning things over, unpacking a project or a task, or even, what's your job, right? And what they realized was that a relationship person is going to communicate differently than an executing, but that executing is receiving the relationship concept. So how the relationship person thinks, and the executing really needs to receive how an executing person thinks. So this was kind of like this huge gap of, depending on where our strengths are, we may not be delivering our communication clearly to the person who needs to receive it. And we need to understand, how do they need to receive it?
Yes. And that is, before I was into Gallup and Clifton Strengths, had no ability to figure that out. Right. And so once we got the coaching, we understood, oh my gosh, this is how to communicate, and this is how other people communicate. Right. That helped so much. And now my managers will, they'll have their strengths out and they're like, okay, these are the strengths. This is how we need communicate with that person so they can hear and we can support them. It's a whole different, kind of conversation around that. Right. Because if you come at a relationship person just with executing, they will not get it. Right. And same thing with that strategic, around with the executing or the relationship, they will not get it. You have to, that relationship, it really is people first. So how the executing thinks is what first, what and how, and the relationship thinks who first. So it's a perspective thing. So it's a very different frame of thinking. So, you have to just be aware of that right up front. So, and usually when you meet couples, you're going to have people that might be more, one's going to be more relationship, one might be more strategic, one might be more influencing, one might be more strategic, or so you have to kind of figure out who's who and relate to them. Sometimes you might have two strategics or two influencing or two relationships, but typically you're going to have in a couple, you're going to have one person that leans more towards one than the other.
Yeah.
But in a company, you need to identify who they are. So my company is executing relationship. That is the dominant domain. So in where that shows up is when we used to have our Christmas parties, they used to be kind of boring until we did Clifton Strengths. And I'm like, oh, everybody's executing. So let's have activities where people can do stuff at the Christmas party. Now the Christmas parties are fun because we have a Jenga competition and we have this big saran wrap ball thing where there's these prizes in the saran wrapping. They wrap it up. So we have bingo. We have all these activities because it's for executors. They love to do things, achiever, right? They want action. So even how you're arranging the Christmas party based on the company's domain comes into play.
Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
Yeah, which is interesting because it makes me think of like employees that I've had in the past, and I'm strategic, right? Like out the gate, I'm strategic. In our company, we have strategic, we have executing, we have influencing, and then there's this little bit of relationship. So, which is kind of describes me, right? Like if you really, so I'm like, oh, I'm attracting my people and my tribe. Like these are the people that are going to work and, well with me and well with each other. So, and that relationship is very specific. Like the relationship themes that show up are the ones that care deeply and connect with people. So those are the ones. It's that it's the more
relator. Now the reports, they are relators. Yeah, they are very specific. Even some of your Linda and Mary. If they have a
right.
Yeah, your friends are relator. Yeah. So we assess our friends too.
Yeah, and looking at like who surround us, like our type of people.
Yeah.
But we do have that mix, and we've had this in the past where we had someone that was very people first, And we would tell them what to get done. We'd say, hey, here's this project. You need to do, action step 1, 2, and 3. Here's the subtasks for these. And then they would go off and do this. And it was all about the people. And then we'd be like, well, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, I'm doing this. And it's very like people forward. And I'm like, this isn't about the people. This is a project which includes milestones and, tasks and action steps. You have nothing done on this. And you're doing all this people-y stuff over there. I'm like, this is not what I wanted or what I needed, right? So then I had to understand, okay, what do I need to communicate with this person so that they will get these things done? And I had to really hold them accountable. And then I had to share the purpose and the reasoning behind those action steps and that project and how it was going to serve the people. So once, they connected with the project and the whole intention and how it was going to serve or help or support the people, then they were more connected and focused on getting the action steps done. So, but I had to realize that because I was like, what is this person doing? Like, get over here, like we got to get you back on track. So that could be something that I think can derail when you're mentoring someone or bringing somebody up or positioning somebody as like your second, is really understanding what strengths do they have and what do they lead with, versus yours. And how do you guys get on the same page to make sure that the expectations and needs are understood?
Yeah. And that's important because you want to make sure the expectations are understood and the needs. So we can't just abdicate everything, dump all this responsibility on our right-hand person and say, okay, this is yours now, this is your baby, and then walk out the door. We really need to help them set up like guidelines, boundaries, like who gets access to them, what levels. So we have levels, like there's like certain questions that would go to me, certain questions that would go to other people. They're levels of importance. Like who gets to talk to me is different than other people. So we want to make sure that we don't just abdicate and dump things on our right-hand person. Like set them up to win and go over the expectations. And maybe it's a progressive like responsibility of who gets, access to them and what they're responsible for. And like, we don't want, maybe at the beginning, they have 2 or 3 people and then it widens up to a little bit more, but we can't have everybody in the company calling us to solve everybody's problems. Then all of a sudden, everybody in the company is calling them to solve all their problems, right? We want to figure out what is reasonable. And then once they are in handling much, much more, how do we then teach them to train their right-hand person? So they need a right-hand person that they're developing even before we hand, they're taking the majority of stuff over. So not only do we need to develop our right-hand person, they need to develop their right-hand person. Otherwise, it becomes a heavy load and people will quit. I have a mentor, and he was sharing with me that happened to 2 of his people. He kind of dumped it on them, and then they could only do it for about 2 years, and they just burnt out. And they never developed any right-hand person. So the third person he got, the first thing he started doing was like, okay, you're going to be my right-hand person. And then this person over here is going to be your right-hand person. And then it started to work. And I was like, oh, okay. So make sure that they have a helper or a future helper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, like you can't take your finger off the pulse. Like this has happened, in my company where you start turning things over and it's like, one step at a time, turning things over.
Yes.
And then, the person's like, okay, now you get a right-hand person that you're going to start turning things over to as well. So I've seen where, my team members, they don't turn everything over, right? They're doing all their stuff and then they're trying to do all their, the stuff for their person and support their person. And it's not working because they're not letting go, right? It's like the kid gloves, right? And it's like, this person is a grown adult. This is their job. This is what they're getting paid for. And if you keep trying to, compensate for them and their job getting done, one, they're never going to do their job. You're telling them you don't believe in them, and you're overworking yourself and not showing up as your best self. So I would say watch out for those signs. If your second starts developing their own person and you see these kind of things happening where you're like, why aren't they doing that? That's their job, or why haven't you turned that over to them yet? Or gee, you seem a little scattered and not quite yourself and on the ball. That I think is an indication of a lack of delegation and them trying to compensate for turning things over for whatever reason, to where they're like, oh, I can't just, if I give this to them, they're going to drown. And it's like, whose assumption is that? So I would say continue to coach your person around developing their person, and don't take your finger off the pulse until that they're kind of all grown up, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And you definitely want to don't take your finger off the pulse. That's, pay attention and know there's going to be particular times of the year that they're going to struggle, like in the lawn care and landscape industry, right? Or the tax industry, or, retail. It's not going to be smooth sailing the whole year, right? There's going to be times of the year where, it's going to be busy, or it's going to be a transition period, or it's going to be crazy time. Just know that they're going to have, a little bit of a struggle until they get it all figured out. And you're going to have to be there for them. It's for the extra support. And maybe you don't have to help them through it, but just being around. Sometimes them just knowing that your energy is there and you're there if they need you is enough. And also knowing not to butt in and just not letting them know you're there is enough support. So that's also helpful to stay out of the way, which is so hard to do sometimes. Even now, I'm just like, oh, I want to be involved in that. I can't.
It's a fine balance between giving them their space and then, being there to support them and coach them.
Yeah.
And I get it, because it's, it's when I'm like the worst when I get into my team's lane, and I'm like, oh, I'll just go help them with this. I just create problems, and I know it. And I'll even be doing something and I'm like, I am so going to mess this up. And I'm going to have to then tell them like, oh, I tried to do this and it didn't work, when it would have been better just to say, hey, I saw this. Can you fix it, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
So there's just that really fine balance, and we don't want to step on their toes, but we also have to be mindful of being curious and holding them accountable for what is their job.
Yes.
Because if we don't kind of double check on that, there might be an assumption that it isn't their job.
Right.
Then that's a tough narrative to deal with.
Yeah. Reviewing things with them. Right. We definitely still review a lot of things. We just want to go over the numbers, review things, see where they're at. Yep. See what challenges and what constraints they have. So, and that should be done monthly and quarterly. So we still do that. Yep. And sometimes it's comfortable and sometimes it can be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I usually know if the meetings get canceled or postponed for some weird reason, and it can be, or multiple times, something's up.
Mm-hmm.
And something's going to come up. And usually it's never as big as they think it is, but there's something that's coming up. So that's usually an indicator that something's not being done or followed through, or they're not holding somebody else accountable or something, or they have to do something that they don't want to do, like have that tough conversation with one of their team members, or, talk to a vendor about something or something. It depends on what their role is, or they did something and they have to go now repair it, and they have to tell you about what they did and how they had to go repair it, whether it was a relationship or a job, or they went over something. Yeah. So, but it's that, and we're all going to make mistakes. So that's just part of it. I'm like, oh, that happened. Okay. I was like, yeah, I did that twice. So I get it. But they have to own up to it. And that's just part of what leadership is, or even being human is. Yeah. All right. Well, so if you're thinking about having that right-hand person, just realize that you can do it. You might not get it right the first time, but don't stop. They're out there, and think about, maybe getting some coaching around it, maybe thinking about getting some coaching for the right-hand person. Make sure that they're coachable, and that will speed things up. Don't take your finger off the pulse, like Christine said. Do your reviews with them. What else, Christine?
So the other thing that I would suggest, and it takes time, so this is a beforehand, activity, and it's very helpful. Sit down and make the list of things that you are going to be turning over to them in the order of importance and what the expectation is with that duty or that task. So then you can go over it with them and you have some place to refer back to, or you're both on the same page of what is it that's their, responsibility, and what does success look like? What's the expectation around that? And it makes it real easy. You put that list on a piece of paper. It's black and white. It's very clear. And when you go over it the first time, you can ask questions every time you go over it. When you sit down with them and you want to check on these tasks that you're now turning over to them and how they're doing. And if you're looking at bringing them into this role, and it's kind of like the long game of like, okay, first they're going to take over this area, or, then they're going to do this. Tie some dates to it, right?
Always dates.
Yeah,
yep.
Some, realistic, right? Not like the entrepreneur's wonderful underestimation, that of effort.
Short runways.
Yeah. So, weigh in on it and realize that how long we think it's going to take, it's probably going to take 2 to 3 times as long. Easy.
3 times easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be the other thing, is when you have a date tied to it, ask the person that you're delegating to, like, does this seem like it's doable to you? And, if it's an excessive amount of time that's more than what you outlined, talk about it. Right? Maybe they're not understanding the scope of it. Maybe it's a lot easier than they think it is. Maybe they're complicating it. So this really gives you a space to have conversation around and understanding, knowing that you're on the same page. And it also shows them, like, how to succeed. What does a goal look like? So they don't feel like you're constantly changing, where the goal is.
And I would say, have them make a list too. So just so they understand and they write it out. So I asked my team to give me their list, and they always have stuff on it that I never considered. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Yep. Okay. That's right. Because again, people can see stuff that we do that we don't even see because it's from our perspective. So having them do a list, or things that they want to do more of, or they're really good at, that feeds their energy, that asks them to write that list up of what they can do and spend more time doing, as opposed to, just if I give them the list, I could miss things. So compare list is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Because they might be, picking things up from other team members that they talk to that you're like, oh yeah, I forgot we do that. Or maybe it's coordinating with, the office person. Oh yeah, you got to do that every morning. I forgot to put that on the list, whatever it is. So that is definitely a good add to that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of little things that we all do that we don't even consider. It's like, we just do it. It's not even like I go through my yard every day. I'll drive through, I'll walk through. I'm looking for things that don't belong or are out of place. And so, but I don't have that written down as a to-do, but somebody should be doing that every day. Yep. That should be a thing, but, yep, absolutely. All right. So what size of a business should you start looking at having a right-hand person, do you think?
So I think that it starts to happen around like the 750 to like 1.5, depending on your profitability, your
Okay.
gross profit margin is, but you want to make sure that that person is contributing to revenue, right?
Billable hours.
Yes. So that's going to be the big thing is when you scale up, you want to make sure that you're not moving into a billable role to where it's like you're not producing any revenue. Oh, and guess what? Neither is the new person that you're bringing up, because that you're going to go broke real fast.
2 people in overhead under $1 million or even $1.2 million. The model does not work.
No.
It does not work. No.
Right. So you're looking at either A, take things off of me so I can go produce more, right? Or B, you're going to be taking things off of me so you can go produce more so I can work on the business, right? And that doesn't mean like you're just going to go, sit in the park or stay home during March Madness, right? And just watch basketball. Like that's not what it means. It means you're going to be working on the business, right? Doing some high value work that's going to get you to the next level. Or maybe it means it frees up your time to work with that coach that you really need to work with and the things that you guys are identifying that needs to be done to level up your business.
Right.
Right. So you want it to free up time that you're going to be able to do some high value work on your company.
Yeah. I mean, I worked in the field till we were about $1.5 million, $1.6 million. And this is going back 20 years ago. So that's 20 years ago, $1.5 million, not 2025 $1.5 million. So it would probably be $3 million about revenue, maybe 20 years.
I want to right now. I want to be like, it's 5 times the amount.
But but it's not, 20 years ago, 1.6 million is probably $2.5 to $3 million.
Yeah.
So my point is that, you can't be overhead in a $1.5 million landscape business in 2025 or $1.2 million. You can't be all overhead. I would do my estimates at night. I would sell and do estimates on Saturday, and I would run a landscape crew during the day, and I would work on estimates, sometimes during lunch. I would call people during lunch. But I had to, even at that level, I had to produce revenue. And the only overhead we had was an office manager, and then she would do all the bookkeeping, the billing, answer the phone. But we just didn't have overhead. We didn't have salespeople. We didn't have anybody that was just strictly overhead. It just, the model did not make sense. So yeah, get that right-hand person and they can help get the crews out. They can help you with some scheduling, but they're going to go out and they're going to go produce dollars. Probably 75% of their salary. I mean, their time's going to still be in production.
Yeah. And just, looking at that business model, the first practice that you're going to have on that right-hand person is going to be your administrative staff, right? Because at some point in your company, you did all of that yourself, where you're like, oh, I did the bookkeeping, I did the invoicing, I called the customers, I did this, I did that, right? So it's like you could look at that as like a practice run, because you're going to have to delegate and turn over all of those administrative tasks to free up your time so you can go produce more or manage more people. So that's kind of a good test run, getting started is turning everything over administratively if you didn't have that person in place yet. And, how did that go? And what could be improved? So if you're looking at like, well, I have an admin person and I've been thinking about getting, this right-hand person, reflect back on when you brought that admin person on board and what you would do differently this time, in addition to like what we talked about, because they are freeing up your time to go do something else. It's the same concept, except this person that you're bringing in is going to be managing billables. They're going to be producing, revenue, contributing towards that and supporting that role.
Yes. Yeah. The admin's very, very important to support the owner and then the right-hand person. All right. Well, anything else you want to add? I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, we want to make sure when you're ready to bring in that right-hand person that you're not sacrificing your profit, that you're looking at what's going to be delegated and ensuring that you're not letting go of billable time, but increasing the overhead of the company. So you want to make sure that it supports itself in some way, shape, or form. And look at what are you going to be doing from, instead as you're delegating new things to this other person, in this new role that you're delegating and getting off your plate. So make space too for communicating about the expectations of this and continue to check in, because like Steve said, you can't just set them free and throw all this stuff at them and expect them to, just come out like this. I mean, maybe you might have this person if like you won the lottery type thing with hiring someone where they just pick it all up. They don't even have to talk to you and they make it better. Like that's like a 1% chance that's going to happen. So you're going to have to, carry this and make sure you check in with them and connect with them and, support them in succeeding in being your second.
Right. Yeah. So I just ran $1.5 million 20 years ago. Now $2.5 million. It seems light, but yeah. It seems like everything more than doubled since 2005. But yeah, it takes time to find the right people and coach them if they're coachable. That's the other thing. Like if you find somebody that's so talented in one field, like if you watch soccer, Messi, I mean, he's 85% of his kicks are left footed, but he can still be a great soccer player, right? So if we find somebody that can be talented and they can get coaching, they can still be on your team and be great. So that's why we love Clifton Strength so much. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you for joining us on today's podcast, and we look forward to you joining us on the next one. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.